I'm a 31-year-old man, and I've been married for 3 years to Kara, who is 30 years old. She works in the advertising industry, and I'm an executive at a multinational corporation. I met Kara on a dating app, and after a couple of years of an on and off relationship, we decided to tie the knot. We both have love and respect for each other, but I'd say we're a more mature couple who value each other's personal space and aren't overly sentimental. Kara works as a creative developer in advertising, which means her work hours are irregular and disorganized. I've been understanding about this for the past 3 years, but lately, I've been sensing that something is off. I tried having an honest conversation with Kara about my feelings, but she dismissed it, saying that I was just overthinking things. Here's the situation. Last year, my nephew Julian, who is 25 years old, finished his studies in cinematography and was looking for a job. Since Kara works in advertising, he asked her for a referral. Even though her agency wasn't hiring cinematographers at that time, she tried to connect him with other agencies where her friends and contacts were employed. But after a few months, the hiring manager at Kara's agency saw Julian's work and offered him a better job with higher pay. When Kara found out that Julian had been offered a position at her agency, she advised him not to accept it. She said he shouldn't switch jobs so soon, and she painted her agency in a negative light, mentioning that the work culture was toxic and it wasn't a great place to work. What's surprising is that Kara had never complained about her workplace being toxic before that conversation. She had been with that agency for years. Her advice made Julian suspicious, as if she didn't want him to join her agency. He didn't say anything, but his expression clearly showed that he wasn't convinced by her explanation. After Julian left, I talked to Kara about why she hesitated to let Julian join her agency. She explained that her agency isn't a good fit for camera persons and cinematographers due to a toxic advertising director. I questioned her about how she could work there for so long if it was toxic, especially since she had never mentioned it before. She replied that her reporting structure is different. She reports to a non-toxic creative head, but her friends have informed her that the advertising director is difficult to deal with. The following day, I called Julian and attempted to provide him with the same explanation Kara had given me. He informed me that he hadn't made a decision yet and was still evaluating the job offer. He mentioned that he planned to research information online from previous employees and so on. I ended the conversation there and moved on from the topic. I didn't follow up with Julian again regarding this matter, and weeks went by. Perhaps a couple of months later, Kara returned home looking angry. I asked her why, but she ignored me and headed for a shower. I figured she might be stressed due to work-related issues, so I didn't dwell on it. After her shower, she went straight to bed without eating dinner. I tried to comfort her, inquired about her mood, and encouraged her to eat, but she declined, mentioning she was tired and just wanted to sleep. I gave her space, understanding that after a tiring work shift, sleep could take precedence over food or spending time with her husband. The next morning, she seemed back to normal, and neither of us mentioned the incident to avoid adding to her stress. She arrived later that evening. I assumed she had extended her shift as usual, but when she walked in, she was extremely angry. She didn't wait for me to ask, but immediately vented her frustration. It turned out that she was furious because Julian had disregarded her advice and joined her agency. She went on to say that no one in my family loves her or respects her opinions. I was taken aback by her reaction. I mean, it shouldn't have been such a big deal if Julian chose not to follow her advice, right? He's an adult and has the right to decide where he wants to work. Kara has always been a strong-willed woman, and I admire her for her confident personality. It's because of her determination that she has succeeded in a career field mostly dominated by men. However, there are times when Kara can be quite stubborn. In the early stages of our relationship, I struggled because she would often stand her ground and not be willing to change her mind. Yet, over time, I realized her intelligence and intuition. Her choices and predictions have proven to be right more often than not. So, I've learned to trust her instincts. even if sometimes she couldn't explain her point logically. When Kara expressed her anger towards me, I didn't react angrily in return. I knew that would only make the situation worse. Once she had said her piece, I helped her calm down. I reassured her that I wholeheartedly believed in her judgment, but we couldn't impose our decisions on our families. Could we? I explained that she had tried her best to prevent Julian from making a risky move, but if he still chose that path, we should let him experience it and learn from it. To satisfy her ego, I told her that she would eventually have the upper hand in this situation. Of course, I didn't want my nephew to suffer, but I believed in letting individuals face the outcomes of their own choices. Plus, it wasn't like he was bound to that job forever. He could leave whenever he wanted. While I tried to comfort Kara, she remained silent, and I couldn't tell if she was convinced by my words. So I chose to let the matter go. It's been over 3 months since then, but Kara's behavior has been strange. She gives me the cold shoulder every now and then. Some days, she acts normal, while on others, she feels like a complete stranger to me. I attempted to address this issue with her multiple times, but she dismissed her behavior as a result of her busy work schedule and such things. She insists that I'm overthinking and that she's just being her usual self. I asked her if she was still upset about the situation with Julian, but she claimed that he doesn't matter to her. I know her comments are harsh, but I also realize it's a temporary phase. She'll likely be okay eventually. I haven't talked to Julian since he joined the agency, but I assume he's doing fine since he hasn't left the job yet. My bigger concern is how Kara is treating me. At times, I sense that her coldness could be connected to Julian ignoring her advice and her feeling undervalued. Other times, I wonder if there's something else bothering her. I'm unsure how to navigate through this situation. Update. Hello? As I mentioned in the comments on my post, I decided to let that phase pass on its own. I focused on my job, joined a gym, and set a goal to lose 10 pounds. However, it seems Julian had something in store for me. Last week was Julian's birthday. Honestly, I usually only remember Kara's birthday and our anniversary. I wouldn't have known about it if I hadn't seen it on social media, so I gave Julian a call to wish him. He sounded happy, but when I asked about his work, he grew quiet and expressed a desire to meet up with me. Julian mentioned that he had taken the day off and wanted to have lunch together. It surprised me because a 25-year-old typically wouldn't want to have lunch with their uncle on their birthday, unless it was for a significant reason. I inquired if everything was fine at his workplace, as I had some trust in Kara's perspective, and believed that Julian's boss might truly be problematic. I thought Julian might have realized that ignoring Kara's advice wasn't a good idea. So I agreed to the meeting. I had to pretend to be sick to take a sudden day off, but I was curious to find out what Julian had to share. During our lunch, he appeared uneasy most of the time. I asked if something was bothering him, and he denied it. I even inquired about his boss and work stress, but he assured me that work was going well. His strange behavior made me uneasy, so I straightforwardly asked him if he wanted to talk to me about something. He seemed caught off guard, and confessed that he had something on his mind. He shared with me that he's noticed Kara being unusually close to her boss, the creative head. They often have lunch and coffee breaks together. She frequently leaves the office early with him, which has become a topic of office gossip. He explained that as Kara's aunt, he feels troubled when people talk negatively about her. Since everyone at the office knows that Julian is my nephew, they avoid gossiping about Kara in front of him. But you know how these things spread quickly. I asked him if he was certain about what he was saying. He squeezed his hands together and apologized repeatedly, saying he was sorry for revealing all this. He was hesitant at first to provide details, fearing it might hurt me. He only opened up when I insisted. He mentioned that it's possible the situation is just a rumor because they also have to accompany their boss to client meetings. It's conceivable that Kara could be leaving the office for legitimate work reasons. I felt overwhelmed and struggled to process the information. The issue was that Julian wasn't completely sure about it. There was a chance it was just speculation, unfounded gossip. Additionally, I had no evidence to confront Kara, which made my situation even more suffocating. When I got home, I felt disoriented. I spent the entire evening alone. Even at the dinner table, I lowered my head to my plate and picked at my food. Kara asked me a few times if I was all right, and I just nodded. I couldn't sleep, so I wrapped myself in the blanket, feeling cold and distant. I'm not sure what came over me when I suddenly asked Kara, "Why didn't you want Julian to join your agency?" She seemed surprised and asked why I was bringing up the topic again. I told her calmly that I had met Julian today, and he seemed content with his work and his boss. Kara rolled her eyes and set down her phone. After taking a deep breath, she said, "You know my intentions weren't wrong. I'm not sure how he's getting along with his boss. Maybe it's because they share similar beliefs." I questioned what she meant by same ideology. She hesitated, but then explained that she found Julian to have conservative views. He raises concerns about the length of women's skirts or low necklines. Regarding his boss, it's safe to say he's a chauvinist who looks down on women in his team. Kara shared that Julian is meddlesome and likes to control the women in his life, which is why she wasn't comfortable with him working at her agency. I asked why she didn't tell me this earlier. She said it would have hurt me, and she didn't think it was necessary to go into those details. After that, I didn't say anything. As I look back, I realized she had a point to some extent. I've heard Julian criticize my sister for wearing fashionable clothes or bold lipstick, claiming she's not young enough for that. He also opposed her decision to live independently away from home. Once, he even confronted a boy who was talking to his sister in a friendly manner at school. So, I'm a bit unsure about forming a judgment here. While I trust Kara, I don't want to be blindsided or deceived. Regardless, I can't completely disregard Julian's instincts this time. I'd appreciate any solid advice. Thanks a lot. Update. I appreciate the great advice I received from this community. Following their suggestions, I approached Julian and asked him to provide evidence for his claim. He expressed reluctance, fearing that our family might label him as a marriage breaker if he gets involved. I assured him that even if his suspicions were proven false, I wouldn't blame him. If what he's saying is true, exposing a cheating relationship would be a significant help. Eventually, he agreed to give it a try, although he couldn't promise definite results. A few days later, Kara returned from work and started having angry outbursts directed at me. She accused me of using Julian to spy on her. According to her, Julian's actions have made her work life miserable, and she wasn't going to tolerate it. She even threatened Julian's job if he continued spying on her. I insisted that she explain her extreme reaction. She fired back, claiming I shouldn't act naive when I was the one orchestrating these actions with Julian's assistance. It felt awful to lie, but I assured her that I had no involvement in any of this. She revealed that Julian had been closely watching her every move, whether she was in the cafeteria or on the terrace for a smoke break. In that moment, I felt a sense of frustration about Julian's misguided actions. What was he thinking by following her everywhere? Even if there was something going on, it's unlikely she'd engage in such activities in public spaces, right? At that point, I was desperately hoping that Julian's suspicions would prove to be unfounded. I reassured Kara and assured her that I would have a conversation with Julian to address the situation. My plan was to meet with Julian over the weekend and encourage him to focus on his career rather than trying to expose Kara. However, the next day, I received an unexpected call from Mr. Stewart, Kara's father. He surprised me by suggesting that I intervene with Julian, as he believed Julian was harassing Kara at her workplace. I was momentarily speechless, wondering how Mr. Stewart came to know about the situation. With hesitation, I inquired if Kara had discussed this matter with him. He explained that he was near Kara's office that afternoon, so they decided to have lunch together, during which Kara shared her experience of Julian spying on her. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I questioned whether Kara might be exaggerating the situation. I assured Mr. Stewart that I would handle it. Later, when Kara returned home, I mentioned her father's phone call and expressed that we could have resolved the issue privately. I reminded her of my promise to address the matter with Julian. However, She became defensive, asserting that it was her right to discuss her problems with her father. A bit of background about Mr. Stewart. He's an overly protective father who tends to be quite excessive in his care for his daughter. He's the type who might reach for a gun if anyone so much as glances at his daughter. He often boasts about being the father of an independent girl, taking pride in his role. I understand that being a father naturally involves some level of protectiveness and pride, but trust me, he takes it to the extreme. Anyway, in response, I immediately called Julian and arranged a meeting for the upcoming week. The rest of the week remained relatively quiet. When the following weekend arrived, I met up with Julian to discuss the situation, but it turns out he had a different plan in mind. I began by expressing gratitude for his concern, but as I continued to ask him to tone it down, he interrupted me and revealed he had something to show me. He opened his laptop and presented a video clip that left me feeling uneasy. The video was quite lengthy, but Julian quickly skipped to the relevant part I was searching for. The footage depicted Kara and her boss in an elevator. He was touching her hands while handling files, and then it escalated to him, touching other parts of her body. I can't even bring myself to describe it. There were not just one but several clips showing her boss's inappropriate behavior in the elevator, deserted areas like fire exit gateways, and staircases. I couldn't bear to watch all the clips fully with my eyes wide open. I asked Julian to transfer the files to me and also inquired how he managed to access the CCTV footage from the workplace, which employees are not supposed to have access to. He mentioned having friends in the engineering department who were able to hack into the CCTV cameras in the secluded parts of the office. When I got back home, Kara immediately inquired if I had talked some sense into Julian. I replied, "Yes. I advised Julian not to meddle in your affairs when you're dealing with your boss's advances." My voice involuntarily rose as I said that, which caught her off guard. She attempted to play the victim, claiming that Julian had developed a hatred for her. I strongly confronted her, cutting off her dramatics, and told her I had concrete evidence that her boss was acting inappropriately with her. She didn't back down until I actually showed her the video clips. She seemed stunned for a moment before reverting to her self-centered attitude, threatening Julian for invading employee privacy and warning that she'd report the security department for leaking the CCTV footage. I couldn't comprehend her reasoning. She insisted the evidence was fabricated and urged me to verify it before tarnishing her reputation. I straightforwardly informed her that I possessed undeniable proof of her visits to hotel rooms with her boss. I mentioned hiring a private investigator and claiming to have obtained all the information. This was a bluff on my part, as Julian had provided me with the details of the hotel where Kara and her boss frequently engaged in their inappropriate activities. However, I only knew the hotel's name and had no further specifics. Despite this, I bluffed and stated confidently that I knew all the particulars about their stays at the XYZ hotel. She fell for my bluff and was left speechless. Taking a seat, she urged me to listen to her explanation before reaching any conclusions. I assured her that I was ready to hear her side of the story. She began, "You're aware I work in the advertising industry, right? It's just business. I have to keep my boss satisfied. There's nothing personal between us, it's just for work, you know?" My insides churned with disbelief. How easily she dismissed the personal aspect and labeled it as strictly professional. It struck me how hypocritical this seemed, considering she often championed women's empowerment in a male-dominated field. No, she wasn't standing tall with pride. She was bowing down with submission. I conveyed to her that her explanation didn't convince me and amounted to blatant infidelity. I emphasized that her cheating marked the end of our relationship, and I intended to proceed with a divorce. With that, I secluded myself in a room, gathered my belongings, and left the house. As I departed, I informed her that she should vacate my residence as soon as possible, and our next encounter would be in a courtroom. She remained silent. I checked into a hotel for a night and caught a flight to Florida the following day. I'll be honest, I had a strong urge to escape from my miserable life. That night, I reached out to a friend who's a lawyer and explained the whole situation. He gathered all the information I provided and assured me that he would send the divorce papers to her address within a week, which happened to be her parents' residence. Now, I'm eager to finalize the divorce as quickly as possible, even though I know it won't be a smooth journey. I'm uncertain about how I'll manage, or if I'll even be able to survive this ordeal. Update. I'm grateful for all the support. Everyone. As I was still in Florida, my lawyer sent the divorce papers to Kara's parents' house. After receiving confirmation from my lawyer about the papers being sent, I received a call from Kara's father a few hours later. He immediately began shouting at me, accusing both me and my nephew of being chauvinistic and selfish. He alleged that the reason for divorcing Kara was due to my jealousy of her successful career. His accusations left me puzzled. Once he finished his accusations, I questioned if he truly knew the actual reason, because his assumptions were far from the truth. I informed him that I didn't know what story Kara had fed him, but I possessed concrete evidence to support my claims, which I shared with him during our call. I asked him to check his phone for the evidence. He went silent. The first part of the silence was likely when he was reviewing the videos I sent him, followed by a silence likely stemming from his own embarrassment. I expressed my regret to him that he had to witness such videos involving his daughter, but I had no other option than to share them. I'm not trying to be a saint here. I can't just stay silent and take all the blame on myself when I'm the one who's been wronged. I'm the victim in this situation. That's all I heard from him. I returned after around a month. By then, Kara had left the house. However, she was opposing the divorce and requesting alimony, as well as a share of the house. Instead, my lawyer countered her alimony claim by highlighting the mental distress I had endured due to her actions. He also assured me that our marriage was short-lived and she had no financial contribution towards purchasing the house, so she couldn't stake a claim to it. The legal case is still ongoing, but I think I've made some progress from where I was a few months ago when all of this was revealed. I'm not in a relationship with anyone, and I don't plan to be in one anytime soon. I'm focusing on overcoming my drinking habit, which I developed during my difficult phase in Florida. I appreciate your patience in reading my story. Hey dude. Right now, I'm on a FaceTime call with my girlfriend. She's supposed to be alone at home. During our call, I doze off and then wake up to go to the bathroom. While I'm in the restroom, I hear strange moaning sounds and swishing noises from her end of the call, like someone using mouthwash. I listen carefully for about 5 minutes just to make sure I'm not mistaken. Eventually, I ask her in a friendly way, "What are you up to?" I'm trying not to sound suspicious. She answers that she's just lying down. So, I ask her about all those noises, and she says she's not doing anything. After that, I'm quiet for a moment, and she mentions that she's still not feeling well. I'm taken aback because she didn't mention being sick in the past few days. Anyway, I decide to tell her that I'm muting myself because I might snore, which is a lie. I'm actually listening closely. I hear the same noises again. It's crazy. I usually only see this kind of stuff on Twitter. I can't believe I might be getting cheated on while on the phone. Unbelievable. How should I handle this? Oh, by the way, she lives about 17 minutes away via a toll road. I'm thinking about driving over to her place to see what's up. I'll keep you all updated. Update. I drove over to her place while staying on the call with her muted. The first thing I checked was if there were any unfamiliar cars around. Surprisingly, I didn't see any. At this point, I'm doubting myself like, am I imagining things? Maybe she's genuinely sick. I even consider heading back home, but then that gut feeling kicks in. You know that feeling, right? The one that's like, nah, you better dig into this situation more. I knock on the door, but she doesn't answer. I hear her moving around and talking on the phone under the covers. I knock again, and this time her phone gets muted, and she pauses our conversation. Now I'm thinking something's definitely not right. Finally, she opens the door and her expression is really surprised. I'm like, "Hey, what's up? I just wanted to come by and see you." She responds with, "Oh hey, what brought you here? I'm just hanging out." At that moment, things get awkward, and I can tell she's really uncomfortable and doesn't want me to enter. I try to kind of push my way in, but she blocks me. We make eye contact for around 30 seconds, and to break the silence, she tells me, "I'm not allowed to have anyone inside." This is despite the fact that she's sneaked me into her house a few times before, and even her mom allowed it when she wasn't there. So I tell her, "I'm sure something's not right, and I want you to let me in." As I start walking in, she places her hand on my chest and says, "No, you're acting crazy. Everything's all right. I really don't like it when someone tries to manipulate me, so I'm like, okay." I begin to walk away. While I'm leaving, the FaceTime call ends. I check the door, and she's still there. Initially, I don't pay much attention, but then I notice her hands. And she doesn't have her phone. This means someone else ended the call. At that moment, I start getting really anxious. I move her aside and head to her room. While I'm walking, I can hear her yelling my name, but I don't care. Eventually, I reach her room, and as soon as I open the door, I feel really uneasy. I can hardly believe what I'm seeing. It's like something straight out of a movie. There's a shirtless guy in her bed, covering his legs with the blanket, and he's looking right at me while I'm looking at him. That's when I hear her footsteps behind me. She grabs me from behind and says, "Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry," crying and all. I'm not one to hit women, but I've never felt such a strong urge to. I'm still locking eyes with this guy, and he's looking away nervously. After around 30 seconds of this, something in my mind suddenly breaks, and I don't feel shocked anymore. I turn to look at her. She's on the ground, crying and everything, and I can't believe what I'm seeing. It's like a scene from a real movie. In her bed, there's a guy without a shirt, his legs covered by a blanket, and he's staring right at me as I'm looking directly back at him. Just then, I hear her footsteps behind me. She grabs me from behind and says, "Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry," while crying and all emotional. Now, I'm not someone who hits women, but I've never felt such a strong desire to slap a girl in my life. I'm still maintaining eye contact with the guy, and he's nervously looking away to the side. Another 30 seconds later, something in my mind clicks, and suddenly, I'm not feeling shocked anymore. I look at her again. She's crying and all that on the ground. Then I shift my gaze to him. He's sweating profusely, staring at me with anxiety written all over his face. I gather up all the things I've ever given her that I can find in the room. With the most serious expression I've ever had, I leave. She follows me as I'm leaving the house, telling me she loves me and all, but I'm not feeling anything. I keep my serious face and walk to my car, then drive away. The entire journey back home, my phone is blowing up with her calls. As I step inside my place, she's still calling non-stop. I had to block her number, otherwise she'd probably still be calling me. I have no idea how I'm going to handle this situation, but the way things unfolded is really messed up. It's messed up for her, but I'm definitely hurting too. Edit. I've made up my mind to never talk to her again. I've gotten the closure I needed, and I won't let her have the satisfaction of getting her closure. Also, the guy involved came to me and said he didn't know she had a boyfriend, and he thought she was just chatting casually when she was talking to me. Strangely, the entire school seems to know about what she did, and many people have distanced themselves from her because of it. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it's like karma has caught up with her. I was 30 years old and happily married to my wife, who was also 30 at the time. We had been married for about 6 years. I'll call her Sarah, which isn't her real name. During those first 6 years of marriage, we traveled, ate together, and spent evenings together pretty much every night. In 2019, I started noticing some signs that, looking back, should have made me realize something was off. In early 2019, I had to go out of town for a work conference, which was the first time I'd ever been away from home overnight without her. She immediately suggested that her friend, a 29-year-old guy I'll call Mark, not his real name, might come over and even stay during those days. Now, for context, she texted this friend all the time. They were close. And I know for sure they had been involved romantically before I met her. I firmly said no, pointing out that he hadn't visited in the 6 years we'd been together, except for the one time I was away. While she got angry, she seemed to respect my wishes based on what I knew and what I saw on the security cameras. There were other things that also made me hesitate, but to save time, I'll move on. Now let's jump to the end of 2019. While we're at the movies, I notice her sending messages to someone on her Apple Watch during the film. This was quite unusual for her, and though I can't recall the exact content, the messages seemed a bit too strong for just a coworker at her new job, even though they weren't explicitly sexual or romantic. After the movie, I bring it up, and she dismisses it. Her behavior starts changing. She sits away from me on the couch, goes to a different room to change clothes, and such. I begin to wonder if she's cheating on me, or if something is being kept from me. I feel guilty for even considering the idea of checking her phone for confirmation, thinking that if I do so, and I'm wrong, our marriage might not be worth continuing. After mulling over it for days, I make up my mind to check in January 2020. Her phone is usually nearby, but I don't know the passcode. Thankfully, I can access her watch, and she had set the passcode to our anniversary, a twist of irony. What I find out next is truly horrifying. Sarah and Mark are discussing her encounters with a coworker, and they're making fun of me for not realizing what's happening. Sarah is talking about how the thought of me touching her disgusts her, and she can't even imagine having children with me. We were trying for kids in mid-2019, which makes this especially painful. Then I read the messages between Sarah and the coworker. We'll call him Carl. Those messages are very explicit, and Sarah is showing more affection for him in every way than she's showing me now. Each message reveals something new that hurts even more. She used a trip she said was to support a friend as an excuse to meet up with Carl. She started changing in the bathroom to hide the hickey marks on her body from me. Her therapist is aware of all this and believes I should know, but also thinks she should be happy with whoever she chooses. I stayed up until 3 or 4 a.m. reading these messages and taking pictures of everything. I couldn't sleep that night, and I clenched my jaw so hard it caused issues for months. She heads off to work. I'm off that day, and my first call is to a lawyer. What choices do I have? What can I legally say or not say when I confront her? I wait for her to return home, rereading the messages to make sure it wasn't just a terrible dream. When I have the talk with her, I share what I know without revealing that I had gone through her texts. I mention that I noticed a hickey, which is a lie, but she talked about it in the messages, and that I'm aware she's texting someone. Sarah denies it, tries to argue that someone else gave her the hickey, but I eventually read a message from her watch. I suppose I hoped she would break down and confess everything. However, instead of that, Sarah explodes in anger over me invading her privacy. The way she tried to twist things and make me the bad guy left me stunned. She storms out of the house and disappears for 3 days. She doesn't let me know where she is, even though I asked her to share her location so I know she's safe. Up until now, I only have a partial understanding of where she went or what she did during that time. When she returns, she tells me she wants to work things out and spend some time together. Things take a bad turn. I catch her sneaking off to meet him once more, and she foolishly leaves her watch behind, allowing me to read their messages in real time. By February 2020, I finally inform her that I've spoken to a lawyer. She insists she won't agree to anything until we go to couples counseling. I go along with it, but it quickly becomes a mess. When I explain that we're there because she had an affair, she argues about my choice of words, suggesting that affair is too strong. She also lies about cheating on me prior to Carl with a married man, something I discovered later by checking her watch again. She admits her plan was to find an apartment and then give me divorce papers without me knowing what was happening. She even tries to shift blame for the affair onto me, using minor disagreements as evidence of my supposedly cold and uncaring behavior. For instance, I didn't immediately react angrily when my parents gave her a Christmas gift she didn't like, or when her parents playfully teased her. At this point, the decision becomes clear. I need to divorce her, as she'll never tell the truth. We agree that Sarah will leave our house, and I even assist her in finding an apartment. I'm willing to do anything to speed up her departure from the house. In March 2020, I witnessed the news about the onset of COVID, and all construction work halts, including the renovation of her apartment, which was nearly ready. This leaves her with nowhere to go. From March to June 2020, I'm stuck in the house with her. Just to clarify, she's familiar enough with legal matters to realize that leaving could complicate her case and result in expenses for her. Those few months were incredibly difficult. Trying to carry out my job and coexist in a house with someone who hurt me and mocked me was sometimes unbearable. We attempted, as best as we could, to keep things civil and avoid shouting at each other whenever we crossed paths. Imagine spending over 90 days preparing meals, passing by each other, and seeing no one else but the person who ended your marriage and shattered your heart. Every day, I pretty much isolated myself in a room for about 8 hours, then occupied my time with yard work or exercise to avoid interacting with her. She mostly moved out in late June when the world began to reopen slightly, and she had all her belongings out by July. Knowing I wanted to keep the house, she manipulated the situation to her advantage to avoid being publicly criticized. To this day, her family remains unaware of what led to the divorce. She didn't inform her parents about the divorce until after the papers were signed. She essentially pressured me into pretending we were still together until that point. Then, I told her she needed to let her parents know or else I would do it. Her parents never inquired about the cause, although a couple of them wished me well. I didn't feel the need to tell them the reason because despite the pain and manipulation she caused, I didn't want to hurt them. Her parents never did me wrong. Carl and Sarah's relationship didn't last. When I found out, Carl urged her to leave me and be with him. However, she attempted to repair our relationship, and he ended things with her, leaving her with no one. Sarah and I rarely communicate now, except when it's absolutely necessary, which is infrequent. At times, I've questioned if it was a mistake not to publicly expose her infidelity. The people who matter to me are aware of the truth. I also never confronted or even spoke to Carl or Mark, or her friend who knew about all of this but didn't warn me. As for myself, I've found someone who is genuinely good, and we have a strong relationship. I haven't told Sarah about it as it's not her concern. Similar to not telling her family about her cheating, I thought about informing Sarah how well I'm doing, but I believe that would just be taking pleasure in her misfortune.